千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Okay, everyone, we are back once again to delve into the Daodejing. Today, we have a rather special presentation, and I will explain in just a moment why it is special. The Tao is constant in non-action, yet there is nothing it does not do. If the sovereign can hold on to this, all things shall transform themselves. Transformed, yet wishing to achieve, I shall restrain them with the simplicity of the nameless. The simplicity of the nameless, they shall be without desire. Without desire, using stillness, the world shall steady itself. That's Daodejing 37. A couple of quick notes before we go on. In line 1, we have non-action, which is the translation of the last two characters there. Now, as we will see in just a moment, the two simple characters actually hide additional meaning, a deeper layer of meaning. So non-action is only the surface level translation of what it appears to be in the original. When we delve deeper into it, we're going to see that it's closer to unattached action. So the non-action translation is in keeping with the idea that even in the original Chinese, people would often mistake wu wei, those two characters, as meaning a lack of action. So keep this in mind that when we talk about non-action, we're talking about non-effort, non-strife, non-attachment, not necessarily doing nothing at all. Also, if we look a little bit further down, we're going to see additional, if you take a look at line 8 and line 9, there's going to be references there to a state of being without desire. So it is easy to get this mixed up with the contemporary Buddhist philosophy ideas of the elimination of all desires. Now, the original Tao context existed for many centuries before Buddhist ideas came into ancient China. So the without desire here is not equivalent. It predated the Buddhist idea on the elimination of desires. This original Tao concept was actually about being free of extraneous desires, unnecessary distracting desires, as opposed to all desires, all inclusive. So keep that in mind, and we will get into the details in just a moment. For now, though, let's take a look at the structure. Let's see if we can detect some kind of structure. This particular chapter presents an interesting challenge in that there's not a whole lot of repeating characters for us to latch onto to be able to see the hidden structure of the chapter. Now, let's begin this way. Let me showcase that in the first two lines, which happen to be the most important two lines of this entire chapter, the first two lines end the same way, with the character Wei, W-E-I. So in a moment, when we dig into the details, you will see that these two characters mean slightly different things, and you will see exactly why. For now, though, because we have this repeating structure here, the Tao is constantly no action, yet there is nothing it does not do, Dao常无为而无不为, we're able to identify that as an introductory subsection. Now, everything else is actually much trickier. Let's take a look at some of the repeating characters that we can identify. We don't see a whole lot of the same characters repeating in the same position in the line. What we do see is a kind of continuation from one part to the next part. So just to kind of jump ahead a little bit, everything that you see below the red line, from line 3 all the way down to line 10, can be seen as one big section because it's a continuous narrative that picks up from line to line. As an example, usually when we see an even number of lines, we have a pretty good idea that the chapter can be divided into divisions of 2 lines each. So in this case, with 10 lines, you can divide them into 5 sets of 2 lines each. But if we do that though, we have to also keep in mind that where there should be a subdivision between line 4 and line 5, we see a continuation where the end character of line 4 is the same as the beginning character of line 5. I think everyone can see that. Those are the characters highlighted in red. And if you pick up on that and then look a little bit further, you're going to see this interesting repetition as well. So where there should be a division between 6 and 7, you've got a continuation. The last 4 characters of 6 are repeated as the 4 characters of line 7. I think everyone can see that. And then one more. When we talked about the without desire part, the last character of line 8 is repeated as the second character of line 9. So in reality, you can think of the last 2 characters of line 8 as being close enough to the first 2 characters of line 9 because the character right before the last one here, the second from last character, wu, means without or not have. And the character right before the same one, the first character of line 9, that's actually the character for negation, like no or not or none. So these are very similar, 无欲 and 不欲. So again, another manifestation of that continuation from line to line. So if we start out dividing up the last 8 lines into 4 sets of 2 lines, we still have to note the fact that there's a continuation from one to the next, from one subsection to the next. So as I pointed out, the last character of line 4 has a linkage to the first character of line 5, as you can see. Then the last 4 characters of line 6 has a linkage to all 4 characters of line 7. Then, as I was just talking about, the last 2 characters of line 8 are a linkage to the first 2 characters of line 9. So that's how it looks. So you can tell that I'm using a thin line, a shorter line, to divide up the last 8 lines into subdivisions of 2 lines each. And that's because, as I mentioned, the bottom part of this particular chapter forms one continuous narrative. And in order to see the continuation of the narrative, you just have to look at the meaning. So the meaning going from one section to the next is that if the sovereign can hold on to this, can hold on to the Tao, the teaching of the Tao, sovereign meaning you, then all things shall transform themselves. Now they transform themselves and yet they wish to achieve, there's the continuation. So because of that, because you can get ahead of yourself, then Lao Tzu says, restrain them with the simplicity of the nameless being the Tao. Then it continues on, simplicity of the nameless, they shall be without desire. This means distracting, extraneous, unnecessary desires that take you away from your true main goal. Then, still continuing, without desires, using stillness, the world shall steady itself. So now you can see it's one continuous thought broken up into 4 subsections. So I think, fascinating characteristic of this particular chapter. Now, I want to explain why 37 is special. And this will enable us to also bring in some additional discussions that you may not be aware of. So for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, I certainly think that you picked the right time to join because we're going to be talking about stuff here that's difficult to find anywhere else. And there's another special reason for why I think this is special. So take a look at this slide. So the top part says Daodejing, and remember the T is actually a D sound, the CH is actually a J sound. Daodejing, and these are the 2 characters. And those of you who are not familiar with the historical origin of the Daodejing may say that, well, you're missing 1 character, right? It should be Daodejing. No. What I have here in the slide is exactly what I mean. The reason why is because it is not that well known, but the Daodejing is actually the combination of 2 books. It's composed of 2 books. And here are the 2 parts. Here's part number 1. Part 1 is chapter 1 to chapter 37. It is known as the Daodejing. It talks about the Tao. So chapter 1 says, Dao ke Dao, 非常道. The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. And this chapter 37 is ending with further statements about the Tao, about how the Tao is constant in non-action. Non-action as in non-attached action. So from chapter 1 to chapter 37, it's actually one continuous book devoted to the topic of the Tao. So what about the second half? The second half is Detached, and that runs from 38 all the way to the end of the Daodejing 81. So 38, the chapter we'll get into next, it'll start out talking about De, which means virtue. And it'll talk about Shangde, which is the highest form of virtue. So you see, the name Daodejing did not come by accident. It is only the Daodejing because it's the combination of Daojing and Dejing, the 2 joined together. 1 to 37, 38 to 81. So now you may be thinking, but wait a minute, we're on 37 today. We're on chapter 37. That's right. Chapter 37, our focus today is the last chapter of the Daojing. In other words, it is the last word from Lao Tzu about the subject of the Tao. After this, he turns his attention to De, virtue. So now I think you can see that it has 37 has special significance, special importance. So now here's another interesting little tidbit for everyone. With Lao Tzu trying to summarize or conclude about the Tao, there would be one thing that he wants to leave everyone with, one concept. The one concept above all that he would like to impart to the readers, to you, to me, to generations of students of the Daodejing. What is it? What is that concept? Well, out of all the different concepts that he can emphasize, he picked one as being the most important one to conclude Daojing, and it is the first two lines. 道常无为而无不为. So we're going to be putting quite a bit of focus on the first two lines because, well, Lao Tzu considered it to be important. So we should pay more attention to it. Now, there's another interesting little factoid that I think you will also find fascinating, as I do. So, were you aware that each chapter of the Daodejing actually has a name? So, every chapter, in addition to a number, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, etc., also has a formal name. That name is typically not translated in the translations that you see out there. So at the time that I did my translation, I just followed that convention. Now, in retrospect, I realized that while most of those authors actually, was not as familiar with the Daodejing as I thought. So when they chose to exclude the title, it might have just been because of them not knowing that they should include it. So at some point down the road, I'll probably go back, translate all the titles, and include them in the online edition so that those titles get preserved. So now that you know that each chapter in the original Chinese has not just a number, but also a title, you may now be curious about the title of 37. Does anyone happen to know or can offer a guess? At any time, I want to encourage everyone to just, type in whatever thoughts may come to your mind into the meeting. When we take a break, when we have time, I will respond to as many as I can. For now, though, I want to tell you about the title of this particular chapter. To do that, I have included a shot of one of my books on the Tao of Jing. So all that shows is the original Chinese. That's the middle part that you see in the slide. Now, let me talk about the different elements on this page. To the right-hand side in bigger print, it starts out with the name of the chapter, and then it gives you the number of the chapter. So let's decrypt this before we move on to the other elements. So these are divided up into 3 characters each. So the third character, that is the character for chapter. The first 2 characters, those are the characters for as the name of the chapter. And then at the bottom, we have the number. So in the middle one, that's the character for 3. And the bottom character there, the bottommost character is the character for 7. 3, 7 together, that's 37. The character before those 2 number characters, that is the equivalence of the TH in English. So like when you say fourth, you add th at the very end, or fifth, add th at the very end, sixth, seventh, etc. Th at the end meaning order or sequence. So in Mandarin, that's what that is. 第三期 means 37th chapter, and the chapter character is not repeated, it's simply implied. And so the first two characters are the name of this character. Now, it's not a mystery, it's not a trick question as to what they are. I've repeated those characters up here in the slide title, as you can see, and I have the English prominently displayed right up here. So now you can put it together for yourself and come upon the realization that the name, the formal title of this chapter, chapter 37, is actually the Wu Wei chapter. Interesting. So there's something special about this concept of Wu Wei that we're going to be delving into. Then let me also draw your attention to the upper left-hand corner of the page. Now it's smaller, so it's more difficult to see. The order is from left to right, and it's the exact same three characters that you see in the larger print. So it also says Wu Wei chapter. Then in the lower left-hand corner, that's just the page number, and specifically that says that this is page 441. So that is a photograph from one of my books, and I use it to illustrate the reality that every chapter of the Daodejing actually has a name, probably not something that you have heard from elsewhere. So now we want to be, we know just by looking at the name, just by seeing how the first 8 characters are special, 道常无为而无不为, that this is the last chapter of the Daodejing, while all of these things make it special and interesting. So this is a good one. This is a good chapter to pay special attention to. Now we're going to be talking quite a bit about this today, and we will be continuing for roughly another 20 minutes, and then we will be taking a break. So let's start with line 1, may as well, right? So right off the bat, I've highlighted the 2 characters which I would like you to be able to recognize on sight. In view of the importance of these 2 characters, I want to challenge you to train yourself, even if you know nothing about Chinese, nothing about Mandarin, that you should be able to recognize these characters on sight. So these are the characters highlighted that I spoke of as non-action. And let's talk about the meaning of that. Very important. So highlighting these 2 characters, Wu Wei, one of the fundamental concepts from Tao teachings. You've heard of Wu Wei quite a few times, I'm sure. And let's talk about Wu Wei, the concept. You may assume that because the formal name, formal title of 37 is Wu Wei, that this may be the first time that Wu Wei is mentioned in the Daodejing. Indeed, it is not. Wu Wei showed up before. It actually showed up in the 2nd chapter of the Daodejing, and then it's been reiterated quite a few times before we get into this one. 37 is actually the 4th chapter to talk about the concept of Wu Wei. It's the special one, though, because it is the last chapter of the Daodejing, and because the formal title of the chapter is Wu Wei. But let me give you all of the other occurrences. In the Daodejing, Wu Wei appears 12 times in 10 chapters. And then we have a listing of the chapters where Wu Wei appears, as you can see. And the reason why it's 12 times but not 12 chapters is because in some of the chapters, Wu Wei appears more than once. So literally, Wu Wei means non-action. In both Chinese and English, the term can easily be mistaken at the surface level as doing nothing, lack of action, inaction, or passivity. I see this misconception all the time. There are basically two different ways to misconceive the intent and the idea behind Wu Wei. One, as I'm mentioning here, is to assume that it means non-action. The other misconception, which is an extreme in the opposite direction, is to invest in Wu Wei all kinds of special, mystical, oriental mystique type of meaning that was not originally present. This is one of the things that teachers with a half understanding, with a partial understanding, academics and scholars and researchers who don't know the original language, one of the problems that they easily fall into is to make up, invent a lot more meaning than is actually present in the original. This happens all the time, not just with Mandarin. This happens whenever you cross the language or cultural barrier. I think everyone already knows the expression namaste. You know, this comes from so many people who study yoga. They will customarily say namaste, and it's worked its way into their daily lives. They use it as an all-purpose greeting, and they are very excited when they read up on the meaning of namaste, and then they'll say, you know, to other people, they'll share with other people, hey, guess what? Namaste means the spirits within me recognizes and greets the eternal spirits within you. No, sorry guys, namaste, it's just a greeting, that's it, okay? You are inventing way too much into it, investing way too much and assuming way too much into a simple everyday expression. Same with Wu Wei, people can stuff in so much more than is actually there. But once you see the original, once you see the characters and how simple that is, you can figure out the meaning in a very clear way, one that is immune from all the complexities that people try to add to it. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about just these two lines. The Tao is constant in non-action, yet there is nothing it does not do. So think of the Tao for a moment as nature, as being interchangeable with nature. So non-action, suppose what it really means is doing nothing. How does that square away with the Tao as nature? Well, from this line, we can easily see that doing nothing can be correct because things are happening in the Tao constantly. There is action all the time. Things are happening in the world, in the universe, in nature, all the time. So the Tao certainly does not do nothing. The Tao is constantly doing so many things. So this is not a paradox. This is not an intentional, reversed, mysterious, puzzling statement from the Tao. No, the only puzzling thing is the misunderstanding or lack of understanding on the part of the listener. So the second line there, yeah, there's nothing it does not do, that definitely accords with the understanding of nature, that the Tao does absolutely everything, that there's nothing left undone, is basically what we're trying to say. So now let's delve into the true meaning of Wu Wei, free of all the obscuring complexities that we encounter out there. So what it actually means is action without attachment, and therefore without struggle or straining effort. Now, plug it back in to line 1 and think about the Tao as being synonymous with nature. Then we see that, yes, indeed, when nature takes action, whenever it takes action, every single time it takes action, nature, not being human, not being a deity, doesn't have human-like emotions, and therefore nature acts without the possibility of emotional attachment to anything. When nature rains on plants, it does not do so lovingly to nurture the plants. It feels nothing either way. It could be raining too much, causing a flood, causing damage. There's no emotional attachments. So that's true. The Tao is constant in non-attached action. And when nature acts, there's no struggle. Nature does not struggle to do anything. It simply does everything. That makes a lot of sense. There's no straining effort on the part of nature to do anything. When the sun rises, it rises. It doesn't strain to rise. It doesn't put in this extra effort to rise. If we see any kind of attachment, any kind of emotions, like, oh, it's raining, the angels are crying, we're investing into something without emotions, our own human preferences, that we want to see a reflection of ourselves in nature. But overall, though, the sages are right. In reality, nature, the Tao, does everything without feeling anything. No struggle, no strain, no effort, no attachments. Okay? So in conclusion, we can see that's how the Tao, nature, functions. There are no human emotions involved in the working of natural laws, so everything happens in an effortless and detached way. That's how it is. That's reality we're talking about. When we sort of detach from our own inclination to invest human qualities into everything, we have to admit, yep, it rained, it just rained, lightning flashed, yeah, that happened. It wasn't because somebody up there was angry, it was just happening because of the electricity that was charged up in the clouds that needed to be released with a discharge upon a high point in the land. That's lightning. No emotions, just the natural workings of natural laws. So here's what I want to point out. This is not a profound insight requiring an academic degree. Indeed, academic degrees tend to do the opposite. They make it even more complex, even more difficult to understand. But I say that this can be understood simply through the two characters. The two characters I'm talking about, Wu Wei, the two characters that I'm highlighting here. We can, once you really know what the two characters are, everything falls into place. It is so clear. No convoluted explanations are necessary. First, let's tackle Wu, meaning being without or not have. So I've put the pinyin next to it as convenience and also to save some space in the slide. So meaning without, not having. Example, 无神论. What is that? So 无, this character here, the first character means without. 神 means deity. 论, the last character means ism, ism. So together, the three characters, 无神论, means atheism. That's Mandarin for atheism because 无 means without. Atheism is the concept, is the belief, the lack of a belief in a deity, without a deity. So that's used in that way all the time in Mandarin. 无, to not have any. Now let's tackle the second character. The second character can have two primary meanings that are only tangentially related. So wei is the second character, and the first meaning is actions, achievements, accomplishments, works. And the example that I have here, this is also a very common expression in Mandarin. 年轻有为. So what does that mean? It means someone who's still young and yet has accomplished much. Let me break it down for you. 年 means year, 轻 means light. 年轻 together means young, light in the number of years that you have. 有 is the opposite of 无. 有 means to have, 无 means to not have. And then wei, the last one, is the character in question. So this is a youth who has accomplishments or achievements. Very common expression in everyday Mandarin, 年轻有为. Now this is just one of the two primary meanings of the character. So one of the skills in the Tao is to be able to switch back and forth between the two meanings. Let me talk about the second one. The second meaning is purpose or purposes, if it's plural, agenda, reason, motivation. Reason as in the reason why you do something. Motivation, the motivation as in the reason why you do something. So here's the example. 为什么? This is used every day by everyone when you speak Mandarin. This three characters, these three characters here together means why. And then if you were to break it down, you would start with the last two characters, 什么, which is, by the way, by itself, it's a question, 什么. It means what. And then the first character, wei, means for. For as in the reason for which you do something. So when you put it together, it's for what? For what is syntactically the same as why. Why did you do that? For what purpose did you do that? So now you see the two distinct different meanings of wei. One is actions, achievements, accomplishments. The other one is the for in for what? For what reason? For what purpose? What is your motivation? Okay, so these are the two meanings, and this builds the understanding that you will need to properly decipher wu wei. So when you put it together, the meaning is without agenda or attachment to the outcome. That's branch number two. That's definition number two. So when you say wu wei, you're basically saying that, well, I'm doing something because it is the right thing to do. It is what I should do. It's not because I'm doing it for looking better to my peers. I'm not doing it profit motive. I'm not doing it for selfish reasons. I'm doing it just because it should be done. That is Wu Wei. Action without agenda or attachment to the outcome. I'm doing something because I want to do it right. I am performing an athletic movement. I want to do it as well as I can. I'm not worried about the outcome, i.e. the score. I'm just doing it to be correct, to be as perfect as I can manage. That's Wu Wei, without agenda, without attachment to the outcome. That's all it means. It doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. So let's go a little deeper, and then we'll be taking a break. Let me draw your attention to line number 2. Yet there is nothing it does not do. So what I've done here is that I have isolated 3 characters. And I'm putting it down here, 无不为. So what is that? What does that mean? It's a double negative. So the very first thing to realize is that the Wu Wei in line 1 is the acting without agenda, acting without attachments. So that's what that Wei is. In the second line, you have to switch context to the other definition. Wei here becomes action or accomplishment. Here, Wei takes the action part of the meaning. So the meaning is that there is nothing the Tao does not or cannot accomplish. So can we simplify that a little bit? Let's take out the double negative so it's clearer. Take out the double negative to simplify. And what it says is that the Tao does or can do absolutely everything. I think that's clear. So we've gone from complex, academic, convoluted explanations to something that is very simple, very easy to understand. There's really nothing difficult about it if you really know the original. So let's take a look, let's check. Let's do a reality check and make sure we're on the right track. We look at the world and we can see this is true. From the stars and galaxies all the way down to blades of grass and beyond. Nature does everything we can see, plus much more we cannot perceive. Is that true? Yes, it's true. There's nothing that the nature does not do. Nature, the universe, does absolutely everything. That's the Tao. So excellent. We have accomplished one of my objectives for today, and that is a simplified yet the clearest possible explanation of Wu Wei. Nothing else really compares. You look at anyone else's explanation, you will see that, hey, they're trying to maybe add too much to the original meaning, or they're kind of fuzzy on what it actually means. No fuzziness here, only clarity. This is exactly what it means. So here's what I want to talk about next. When we talk about nature working all the time, the Tao does absolutely everything. It is, when you think about it, a marvelous coordination of activities where everything is perfectly orchestrated, and universal orchestration where everything happens exactly at the time that it should happen. All of this notes that the Tao doesn't ever try to do anything. That's a uniquely human characteristic that when you think about doing something, a reaction might be, I'll try, sort of a half-assed, not a wholehearted commitment to it. So Tao cultivators attempt to emulate nature and the Tao and attempt to reduce this whole idea of I'll try, and then quit at the first sign of obstacle. So this is the reason why to a Tao cultivator, either you commit to doing something or you decide that it's a bad idea and you don't do it. So looking at the universe, looking at existence, looking at the Tao that is everywhere, this is what we recognize as the universal way. So the goal that we have as Tao cultivators is to harmonize with the universal way. So in order to harmonize with this universal way of existence, we apply the Tao of Wu Wei to ourselves. We want to act without trying to act. We just want to make something happen. So example one, we want to act without attachments, just like the universe does. So the example that I have here is that when you do act with attachments, you are, for instance, attached to your score. And now I say score, but it can be, for instance, sales quota. It can be the score of a sporting event, maybe a game of basketball, or a competition between yourself and your friends. So when you are too attached to that, you are constantly comparing how you're doing compared to other people. That actually pulls you away from the path of excellence. You're so worried about how you compare that ironically, it makes you compare worse. It lowers your score because you are not focusing on what you need to do. So the comparison brings you more depression. So we want to act without attachments, like attachments to the final outcome or the score. We also want to act without conditions. So notice how people will oftentimes do things with strings attached. And this is usually an attempt to control, to manipulate. So example here, I will do it if and only if, to make it conditional upon something. To a Tao cultivator, the real question to ask is, should I do it? Is it the right thing to do? If it is, then I will do it without being dependent on somebody else's action or inaction. So we minimize trying to do things, and we minimize making our actions conditional, dependent upon someone else. And then here we are, half-hearted attempts. Okay, maybe I can give it a try. And that's usually rather weak. And it's basically a preview of failure. Maybe I'll try because maybe I will fail. So that is what we try to minimize as cultivators of the Tao. And then lastly, once you've committed yourself to a worthwhile endeavor, a Tao cultivator will not constantly second-guess yourself. Second-guessing yourself is actually being attached to the possibility of failure. What if I'm wrong? So that attachment also takes you away from excellence, from the probability of success. Now, this particular list goes on and on. There's many more other things that we can talk about. As an example, Tao cultivators would act without getting hung up on success or failure. This is sort of like the Edison story, that when Thomas Edison was in the process of inventing light bulbs and he had many failures, or what people call failures, he would correct them and say that, no, I found another way to not do it. So anytime that you get a setback, it carries information that can propel you along further toward eventual success. So whatever outcome that you get, it's a good thing if you can make use of it. That's the mindset of the Tao cultivator. So let's continue on. I want to, as I am researching the latest updates on this topic, I'm noticing there's really a lot of misconceptions about Wu Wei. Now that you see the simplistic way that we can understand it, I think you will find that that academia has not always done it right. So I want to make sure that at least I sound out the errors that I see, especially when it comes to Eastern culture, ancient Chinese history, stuff like that. So Wu Wei in academia, I have one column for incorrect and one column for correct. Let me go through them one by one with you and explain why I feel it is incorrect. First, I've read this. Wu Wei emerged from Confucianism to become an important concept in Taoism. That is very wrong. That shows a lack of understanding of how Confucianism came about. Confucius, who came after Lao Zi, was a student of the Tao and Lao Zi. So Confucianism, his own philosophies, are actually based on philosophical Taoism. That's it. He had his own take on the part of Taoism that required discipline. So Confucius talked a lot about social hierarchy and the appropriate etiquette and protocols to follow to maintain the social order. That's actually the Tao. That's actually part of the Tao. So what is this? What is this assertion about Wu Wei emerging from Confucianism? That's not true. If there's Wu Wei in Confucianism, it's because Confucius learned from the Tao. That is a fact. So it isn't something that came out of Confucianism to become an important concept in Taoism. That's all mixed up and incorrect. The truth is, Wu Wei emerged from Taoism to become an important concept in Chinese culture overall. And Confucianism reflected Chinese culture. That's the reality. So as I continue looking, researching what is the prevalent thought about Wu Wei in academia, I also see this. Wu Wei was most commonly used to refer to an ideal form of government. Wrong, very wrong. The reality was that Wu Wei applies to everything. Government is just one of them. Living one's life is another, and arguably more important. It never was most commonly used to refer to an ideal form of government. Now, this misconception came out of another associated misconception about how the Daodejing was written as a political teaching to emperors. Again, wrong. I can say that definitively because I have thousands of years of commentary to back me up. The Daodejing was not written for emperors, it was written for everybody. That includes emperors and you and me. So because many scholars academics saw the Daodejing as being politically oriented. So when they see something like Wu Wei, they would naturally infer that it must be referring to an ideal form of government, a government that practices non-action, and that will be incorrect. So remember, Wu Wei, it's a living, breathing concept. It applies not just in ancient times, but modern times. It applies not just to the ancient kings and emperors, but you and me, the rulers of our own lives. So one more misconception. And this came from one of the sinologists, a scholar who studies ancient Chinese culture and so forth. He wrote that Wu Wei means perfect knowledge, perfect efficaciousness, and perfect economy of energy. What? Okay, this is a distortion. This is adding way too much into the original meaning. Now that you know what the original characters mean, you can tell this particular scholar doesn't know the original characters. So what it really means, Wu Wei means unattached action, that's it. Unattached action, when you take action without attachment, free from attachments, you can accomplish maximal effectiveness with minimal effort. When you take action without attachments, you could decide that you don't need to do anything, then it becomes literal non-action, as in doing nothing. Sometimes, but not all the time, sometimes it means that upon observation, you decide that a nudge is all that's required. A whisper is all that's required. Well, good. That may accomplish maximal effectiveness with minimal effort. So, perfect economy of energy, okay, I can accept that. But not perfect knowledge. No, there's nothing in Wu Wei that implies perfect knowledge of anything. So this is really an invention. This is really an injection of additional meaning from someone who doesn't really know the original. But now you do, and now I want to quiz everybody with a fun little puzzle. Here's what the puzzle looks like. This is Wu Wei in pop culture. And by this, I mean the worldwide / North American culture, the Western culture that we all partake in. So this is part of it. It may not seem like it, but it is. So this right here, this is a puzzle that conveys a message. And the puzzle is, well, what is the message it is trying to convey? So I'm going to give everyone just a few minutes to take a look at this puzzle and then provide me with your guess. The last time that I tried this, I had an answer very quickly within a few seconds. So I am wondering if this group will also be able to decipher this particular puzzle. What is the message that you see here? If any, perhaps you don't see anything. Or perhaps it's just puzzling. Okay, well, I'm already getting pretty good answers. Oh yeah. You guys are on the right track. Yep, I can tell you guys get it. You just get it. That's excellent. Here's the answer, guys. This is the photograph of an action figure of Yoda. I needed to use this one because this is the one that is safe to reuse. So the quote from Yoda has made its way into pop culture. Do or do not. There is no try. Yep, you guys are definitely getting it. Sorry, no Baby Yoda yet, because Baby Yoda hasn't learned enough yet to be able to say, do or do not, there's no try in a higher pitch. But, in time, perhaps Baby Yoda will be talking about this too. Excellent. Okay, so this is the other example. So, as you can see, the concept of Wu Wei is not foreign or alien to us. We are actually pretty familiar with it, but maybe not realize that it came out of the original concept from the Tao. Now, one of the things that I learned is that different people studying the Tao have derived benefits from it. And when I read up on Dr. Wayne Dyer's book, I saw that he described his own personal journey, learning about Wu Wei, and how before and after was dramatically different for him. That is, when he didn't know about the Wu Wei concept, he did things a certain way. But after he read up on the Daodejing and then tried to put some of it to work in his own life, he definitely perceived a difference. So yeah, Dr. Wayne Dyer, definitely. He wrote a book about the Daodejing. So from his book, I can share with everyone the following, his own before and after as described by himself. That previously, when he interacted with his kids, his children, he would attempt every now and then to discipline them. As a parent, as he should, as he has a duty to as a parent. And he said that when he stepped in to impose discipline on his children, he created resistance. Now, every parent has experience with this. We all know that this is likely to be the case whenever you try to tell kids how to do something, what to do, what not to do, there's always the possibility of resistance. Now, as Dr. Wayne Dyer studied the Daodejing, just like you and me were studying the Daodejing, he applied it to his own life, and then he discovered that it was different. That when he saw an instance where he needed to step in to tell his children what or how, he decided to bite his tongue and retreat into silence and just observe, see how it works out. Now, this is when he already knew that his children had learned the basics of life and could think on their own. And he was right. He discovered, observing them, observing his children, that if he allowed them to figure it out for themselves, they do. And a calm energy replaced their frustration. The frustration that they had before in resisting his attempts to impose discipline, that's replaced by calmness. So Dr. Wayne Dyer found himself thinking, this ancient stuff, this is really working. And then he reflected upon his own thoughts and ideas and attitudes, and he realized that previously he assumed his kids didn't know how to be. That's why he felt that he had to interfere. Now, with very young children, that may be the case, but once the kids start growing up, if the parent is doing everything else right, you can assume that the kids are not completely clueless as to right and wrong. And there are times when you let them figure it out for themselves, it will actually strengthen their critical faculties. It will make them better people, being able to judge for themselves. And that's what every parent wants, is for the kids to be able to have that ability. So in his particular case, and keeping in mind that this is his own unique circumstance, you have to take this not as a universal prescription for parenting, but as his own unique experience for his own kids for a particular situation. What he found was that his kids were centered in the Tao, his kids listened to their own essential nature. So he actually didn't need to impose a heavy hand as much as he thought. So I want to use that as a way to extrapolate and to suggest to everyone that there's a possibility that when you feel like you need to interfere, that you can also think about it a second time, give it a second thought, and then be able to reflect on what is actually necessary, interference or letting it be. So Dr. Wayne Dyer wrote that he used to interfere not just with the kids, but also business associates, with a publishing company, with his agent, etc. And when he did that, he actually caused more problems to surface. Now, previously, he just assumed that because he was much more probing, that he would uncover more problems. Later on, though, he tried it in a different way, and he wrote that he became more adept at trusting the Tao. That is, more adept at trusting that people are also capable of being centered in the Tao and listening to their own essential nature. And the more adept he became in placing his trust, his faith in the Tao, the more peace he felt. And he was also surprised that he got more accomplished, not less. Why would this be if his original probing of different people uncovered many more problems? And when he does less of that, he's actually accomplishing more. So reality was not exactly as he had assumed it to be, that there's room for another way, the way of the Tao. So that's Wayne Dyer. But what about you? What about your life? I want to provide some suggestions as to applying Wu Wei in your life, because what Dr. Wayne Dyer said may not apply. You may not have kids, for instance, or kids may be grown. But there are other situations that clearly we can tell there's a possible way to proceed that is not Wu Wei, that is, opposed to the principle of the Tao, and then there's another way that is better, that is in keeping with the Tao, that will bring about more peace, more happiness, better everything. So I have characterized them as not Wu Wei and authentic Wu Wei. So let's go through some of these examples. I've got a couple of Chinese characters here. 我相. That means, that's a Buddhist expression. It means ego. So 我相 is one of the traps that people fall into that causes their actions to not be Wu Wei, to not be in accordance with the Tao. So example, you want to make sure other people know all about the good deeds you have done. You want to be visible. You want to have the spotlight. You want to flaunt your achievements. That is 我相. Ego, it's not Wu Wei. Authentic Wu Wei is the other way. You do good deeds because you should. That's it. Not because they make you look good to other people. That's Wu Wei. Often complicated. So there's another manifestation of not Wu Wei. Let me show you. Three characters. 比较心. Let me explain. First two characters, 比较, means compare. Xin means heart or mind. So this is the mindset of constant comparison. It means you are constantly checking on how you are doing compared to your peers. And this could be material comparison, you know, his house versus my house, the car that he drives versus the car that I drive, his job versus mine, his title versus mine, his salary versus mine. So many comparisons that people can make. And usually the trap that many people fall into is that, oh, I don't do that. I don't compare myself against other people. But then they start talking about the accomplishments of their kids. Oh, my son, my daughter, he did this, she did this. What they're doing is that they are comparing against other people by proxy, using their children as comparison proxies. It's the same thing. It's the same 比较心, not 无为. So rather than to constantly compare yourself against other people, the Wu Wei path of doing things, the Wu Wei path to live is to focus on doing the best job you can, not on keeping track of the score. So one more. Not Wu Wei, 得失心. Let me explain these three characters. First of all, the last character you notice is the same as what I have in the bullets right above this one. So it means the same thing. It's heart or mind. 得失, the first two characters means gain and loss. So this is the mindset that is attached to, obsessed with gain and loss. It's fear-driven. Like, what if I lose XYZ? Especially in terms of material wealth, social position, and reputation. So being worried about certain things take you out of the Wu Wei mindset. Comparing yourself against others, being egocentric, these are all surefire ways to short circuit your practice in Wu Wei. So in this case, the path of Wu Wei would be the following. So your concern is about being of service, being of assistance, not profitability or social prominence. So these are to the right. You now see sort of an abbreviated guide to authentic form of Wu Wei. And then to the left, you see what, well, I think you can tell this is what most people do most of the time, not Wu Wei. And this is why we say that the Tao is not for everybody. Most people are still mired in the left-hand column. Okay, let's continue on. We're done with the first two lines. Let's move on to line 3. Line 3 says if the sovereign can hold on to this. So usually the first two characters in line 3 would have been translated as king, royalty, if the emperor can hold on to this, etc. But as I mentioned, when we talk about the sovereign, we're talking about rulers in general, including you as a ruler of your own life. So let's isolate those two characters to talk about them. So we go from the original literal meaning, royalty and nobility, and extrapolate from there to generalize into those who are in charge, those who rule, and extrapolate further from there into those who are in charge of their own destiny due to their own cultivation of the Tao. Those who cultivate the Tao, therefore, take charge of their own destiny. So this is how to understand the concept of kings and emperors in the Daodejing. So let's talk about line 4. Pardon me, what I meant is the second half of line 3. Let's talk about the second half of line 3. So these 4 characters that I want to zoom in on because we can easily understand them character by character. So the way they sound is 若能守之, and here's the opinion, 若能守之. And the meaning, let's break it down. The first character means if, the second character means can, third character hold, and then it. So if you just string those together, you are not able to create a sensible English sentence by itself. If can hold it, and this is because the pronoun is assumed. The real meaning, you have to add just a little bit more to it. If they, the sovereign, can hold on to the Tao. Alternatively, you can say if you, the sovereign of your own life, can hold on to the Tao. And specifically to the Tao, the first 2 lines talk about Wu Wei. So continue just a little bit onto this. What does it mean to hold on to the Tao? Whenever I see that, I always want to make sure that it's not left in a very ambiguous way, but to clearly give some examples as to how one can hold on to the Tao in daily life. So there are several aspects to it. Let me run through them. The first is that respecting the fact that line 1 and line 2 is emphasizing Wu Wei as a primary characteristic of the Tao, a characteristic that you and I should emulate. So number 1, holding on to the Tao means let Wu Wei be your guide. So I'm confident putting this up there because we've already gone through quite a few examples of what Wu Wei really, really, really means, not what the academics say. Number 2, continuously study Tao teachings. So this is not just an isolated thing that you hear about the Tao today in the here and now. It's a lifelong pursuit. So I would actually encourage everyone, whether it's continuing with me or with someone else, other books, that you do whatever you can to continue your study of the Tao. Even a diluted, distorted version of the Tao can bring about powerful benefits. Never mind something that is accurate. Number 3, keep those teachings in mind in your social interactions. So, not good enough just to study Tao teachings. No, you have to think about those teachings every day, ideally at all times, and let them form the basis of your interactions with other people. That is, when you speak with others, you want to be helpful, nurturing, guiding. You want to be Tao-oriented in what you say to others, encouraging, being positive and constructive. And what you do with other people, you want to follow the Tao exactly. So the Tao teachings should guide your hand in deciding what to do. So that's social interactions. Number 4, apply the Tao to your life. How is that different from just focusing on social interactions with other people? You know, what you say to them, what you do with them. Well, here, what I mean is taking a step back to look at your life overall. So this is not about social interactions with other people, not about connecting, socializing, interacting with others. This is about you and your life. That you apply the Tao to your life in terms of your life's purpose, your vision for yourself in the future, the goal that you can derive out of that. the plan that you will form to help you accomplish whatever that goal is, and the meaning that this has for you to accomplish your purpose in life. So to hold on to the Tao means not just studying, not just applying, not just practicing Wu Wei, but also applying the Tao to your life as a whole, the entire journey, not just a particular episode on a particular day. Number 5, frequently reflect on the current state so you can make adjustments. This means review what's been done today, yesterday, in the recent past, so that you can assess the impact that the Tao has on your life and the lives of the people that you touch. Being able to do the above is what it means to hold on to the Tao, and it will have a profound impact on your life. Okay, now I want to wrap up one more. It looks like we'll be able to make it to line 4 today. Line 4, all things shall transform themselves. So let me isolate that, bring it out to talk about it. So first of all, let me explain the meaning of the characters. So the first 2 characters, that's one wu, that's the 10,000 things, sort of a Taoist jargon, meaning the myriad things or all things. And then we have a character for will, and then the next to last character is self, and then the very last character is transform. Myriad things will self-transform. So you can see that the literal transcription is pretty close to the actual translation used. All things shall transform themselves. What does that mean? It means, when you are a king or the emperor, it means that all aspects of the kingdom would change themselves for the better, making the kingdom far more prosperous and powerful than before. So this is not just about the people in the kingdom. This is also about all the other aspects. So for instance, lack of natural disasters, good weather leading to bountiful harvest, leading to the people being well fed. So all aspects. So what about you? What about you as the ruler of your own life? Most importantly, it meant the subjects for the king. We're still talking about the king. Let's talk about you at a later time. So not just the weather, the crops, everything else. It meant all the subjects under the king will come into alignment with the ruler, so the whole kingdom can be united as one, speaking with one voice, acting with one will, and therefore becoming unstoppable. So what I want to do here is that I want you to take a look at the second and third bullets and think about how this can apply to you. All aspects of your life change themselves for the better, making you more prosperous and more powerful individual. And the last bullet there, I want you to think about how this applies to your life in terms of how the people in your life coming into alignment with you and how powerful that can be, how unstoppable that makes you. So today I have planned for a shorter time for us, but we've actually been talking together in the Tao meeting for an hour and a half now. So I want to jump to the summary for today and leave some for next time to talk about. There's quite a bit to think about this time, a lot of food for thought. So key concepts from 37. First of all, 道常无为而无不为. This is the first two lines that we talked about today. Very important, super important. So I've included the pinyin here. And then I want to share with everyone this idea, this thoughts that I hope you will carry with you in the week to come. Act without attachments, and there will be nothing you cannot do. You will be focusing on doing the right thing and doing things right. And that's one of the ways that we would apply the concept of Wu Wei. First, observe events around you from a detached perspective. Be the watcher, be the observer. If actions are necessary, you will know what minimal actions to take for best results by virtue of your observation. So I want to challenge you to practice doing this, number one. Number two, do the right thing and do things right without worrying about how others will see you, without worrying about all the different opinions that are out there. You can trust the Tao to take care of those details for you. Have faith that the Tao process works. It will take care of those details. Lastly, I'm taking you back to Yoda. Do or do not. There is no try. What that means to me is that you and I should commit to worthwhile endeavors. We should do and not try. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us travel safely. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.